Avinash Sharma. I am a faculty at CSE department. I run a lab called 3D Viz Lab at IIT Jodhpur. IIT Jodhpur is a knowledge partner of this event from India AI designated, although we were not probably considered to play much role here. So basically, I have been requested to sort of give a perspective on global AI, Indian national AI, you can say in the realm of that, and the regional AI if possible. So I thought let's try to generate an image from ChatGPT and see what happens, right? So I just put in ChatGPT that robotics in India, global India and Rajasthan, and I got this image generated, right? So I just brought this image to also to the beginning with itself start that what AI is currently capable of, right? It can generate photorealistic images, but images which are really not so much of meaningful that we want to really achieve. Like for example, in India is associated with the Taj Mahal, right? But I don't know with this building is coming from where, right? There is no Meenakshi temple or any such structure in India, right? So that's where the whole worry is that it is still overfitting and it's trying to do something which may not necessarily be meaningful, which they have themselves put a disclaimer that ChatGPT can make mistake, and that's true with all AI things, right? So essentially, before we go there, we are in academia, so we have a bad habit. We don't assume the people who are standing in the or sitting in the audience is essentially knows everything. So we start with very basic. So what is AI? And this might look redundant, but this basically is important to rehearse that it's about mimicking the human intelligence, right, through machines. And this is an iconic brain tree at IIT Jodhpur. There is a big structure that you will see when you enter in the IIT Jodhpur, which shows that there is some kind of combination, some homogeneity is needed between the machines and the humans for the intelligence to grow, right? And but before we go there, we need to also understand and appreciate the stages of human learning, right? So I found this slide very interesting, which I teach in my learning classes, that you look at how the human learning happens over time, right? Our intelligence evolves over time as we grow old. So when we are in the kid stage, child stage, we are more in the descriptive mode. We are trying to understand what is happening around us, describe what is happening around us, and then we start into diagnostic mode. The moment we go to teenagers, we are sort of getting into predictive. You might have seen a 17, 15-year of my nephew telling to my youngsters or even older people, it will rain today, it might rain today, right? That predictive nature started coming because we started diagnosing few things and understanding if there's a cloud and there's a rainy season, then it might rain, right? Then we go into perspective mode, and this is where the predictive onward is a knowledge and wisdom phase starts. So till then it's all data and information, right? So if you really look at it, AI is still in the realm of teenager, where it's trying to understand from the data, right? It is not really outgrown to a level where it has the wisdom, right, where it can give perspective of how to make something happen, and then again cognitive level in terms of understanding of a concept which can really change the way thinking should happen, right? So if we understand this well, then only we can really understand where AI is and where it should be in the future, right? So the problem, as I said, that we as a human being have seen millions of, you can say, images in our life through our eyes. We hear a lot of words, noises through our ears. All our sensory organs, we get a lot of data collected over the years as we grow up, and we learn from it. Unfortunately, for the AI, we don't have enough data in all domains, right? And I'm sure that's true for humans also. Humans also, if I'm grown up in India, I don't understand the way of life in France, right? Or in Nordic country or any other country in Africa. So of course, we are also limited, but still like we get a lot of data in the reasonably generalized thing. For example, if I ask a child grown up in India to cross a busy road without any traffic signal, they can cross it, right? They can generalize the problem, which is not true if you really ask a robot which is trained on a controlled environment to go and cross on the road. So that's where the problem is, that data is the biggest problem with the machine when we want to learn. In terms of terminology, as I started learning AI when I was in my undergrad back in 2003, 1 to 5, that things when I say AI, it was more about rule-based systems. There were logics and we used to just learn that. Then of course the Turing machines and all. And then the machine learning became very popular from 1990s to 2010 time frame, where SVMs and all sort of machine learning algorithms were ruling. And then the deep learning picked up by the time I finished my PhD back in France, in INRIA, which is a premier research organization of French government. And then there we realized that, hey, something is great is happening with the deep learning, and it is changing the landscape of what machines can do. Of course, it needs a lot of data. And then you started seeing domain-specific success stories with in NLPs we got, LLMs we got, in computer vision we got Meta kind of companies and Google kind of companies coming up with LoRa and other kind of image generation techniques, generative AI techniques. And then robotics also, autonomous driving is practically happening. So what, excuse me. So the future of AI is more towards general intelligence, where we want to really go to the phase of wisdom, where we can understand what is happening and even think of what is the right thing to do, right? Which currently AI is lacking that ability. So, So this is like more from Wiki. I just got a very nice image which talks about excuse me, how from 1900s things started happening in AI and how we reached till 2025. And of course, there are areas where we have what is called first winter, second winter. And I still remember back in 2008, I was being taught by an IIT Madras professor who was a pioneer in neural networks back then in 1960s. And he declared in the first class that the neural network is a dead area, right? And that was before the whole innovation that happens in AI and deep learning becomes scalable. One, because of the compute. The GPUs started really, which were designed by the way for gaming, and they started being used for compute, for deep learning. Then there is also a lot of data started generated, stored, accessible. Network becomes very good, so data can be transferred. Annotations also become easy with the better UI, and all that led to an ability to learn DALL-E kind of model we can generate in back in 2020, very ultra realistic textured images, right? And then again transformer, and by the way 2017 a seminal work came, attention is all you need, and I am happy to say that the first author of that was an Indian PhD student, right, in US. And then that made the whole LLMs happen with the transformer, which is now being employed in the ChatGPT and OpenAI kind of models for language understanding. So a lot of things has happened back from 1900, or even the true things that has happened, and I have seen that happening from 2000 to 2025. Last 25 years were transformational, I should say, when it comes to AI. And as I was just talking about that at different point of time, we started with the narrow intelligence, artificial narrow intelligence, and we are going to artificial general intelligence. And this is basically is the phase through which we have seen. And there are a lot of applications. I don't need to motivate about what AI is useful, but there are a lot of challenges. And I just want to emphasize on that. The first challenge is availability of annotated data. Majority of the AI techniques are supervised techniques. Supervised learning requires a lot of data that needs to be, either manually annotated, or there are some ways with semi-manually annotated data, and then we need to train models which take hours and hours of time and compute. But data is critical. Compute is another thing, as in other sessions also, even in the inaugural session, it was pointed out that compute is another challenge that India is facing, because we have a lot of data, but we don't have enough compute, right? So that is one thing that government is trying to sort out things with, 65 rupees an hour kind of plans for shared compute on cloud. Another thing is lack of generalizability. As I said, like a child who is trained on a village can go to another village and then sort of do things seamlessly, but that's not very easy for robots to, or robotic algorithms to do, right? We tend to, as a human also possibly we tend to overfit to the data, but for machines it's even more vulnerable, right? So we need also self-evolving model. So we learn from our mistakes, and for that also the learning has a mechanism like reinforcement learning techniques are there, which basically exploits the reward based learning and then want to learn without really having annotated data. The fairness is another problem, right? As it was also pointed out in the inaugural session, that these models tend to really have bias, and this bias is coming from data. Like an African American or black person's holding something, it's called gun, versus a white hand holding that is not called gun, right. So, that's an inductive bias that comes from the data, and to bring fairness into the model is something that is a holy grail, because fairness is a subjective term, right. Most often, unfortunately, it's subjective term, because what one set of people consider as a fair, the other side may not consider as a fair. So, how do you really learn models which are fair is a reasonable challenging thing, and a lot of work is happening on that now. Then there is another thing is, how do you really deploy these learning based AI algorithms, which are deep learning algorithms, on a low compute devices, which are like wearable devices, what is known as edge devices, where you have a very low compute, you have very low power, and you don't want to generate a lot of heat, unlike GPUs, which has a dedicated heat sink. Here that is the problem. So, how do you really even learn a model, or if not learn, deploy a huge model? I myself have worked on this kind of problems of network compression. And the last but not the least is the legal accountability, and that is where the biggest challenge is, because you can penalize a human if they make a mistake. How do you penalize a machine? I remember there was a researcher from MSR Cambridge, Microsoft Research Cambridge, giving a talk on, it was like back in 2000, I think 11 or 10, and he gave a very critical example that an African American was declared as a chimpanzee in one of the algorithms. It's a highly racist thing. Now, how do you really do that? Or a toy, kept on the road is called a baby, that's fine. But what if a baby on the road by mistake lying is declared as a toy, right? So, these are really challenging, burning questions that I don't have answer, but we have to figure out some way and make peace with it. That is up to a limit you can assume, you can really make accountability for machines. In the context of India, I think the biggest challenge that I see is the diversity, because unlike European or even African or any other continent where diversity is very limited, in India diversity is huge. You go from north to south, you go from east to west, your facial appearance changes, body structure changes. Even if you are doing a face recognition, it's very hard to train a model which is universal, right. Then again, the demand itself also is very different, right. From the same device, different people in the different part of the country might expect a different performance, right. So, that's very important that to cater this is a challenge and build something which is generalized solution. Then scaling up to a large user pool, right, that is another problem. And the good part is now with, of course, the government is facilitating that, the big organizations like Google and all are setting up huge data centers in India. Because the biggest problem is just the chat GPT you use, if I say generate an image, it takes a lot of compute. And then if that compute request is generated by, you can think of a 1 million people all simultaneously, then everything saturates, right. So, scaling is a big problem, has been a problem in India always. We have successfully tackled in many ways, and this is the problem we have to tackle in the context of AI. Then affordability of AI algorithm, that is another thing, that yes, India is known to be a good service provider because we operate on a very low margin. We our lifestyle require less, well, till now at least, it requires less expensive, basically you need less profit to prosper, and that is the problem with AI, because we are not producing our GPU chips. We are importing them from outside. So, how do you really deal with that? And then of course, the most important one at the bottom, we are a billion people country. So, how do you deal with the risk of AI causing unemployment, especially at the lower level? Till higher white collar jobs, if jobs are going, you can still handle, right. The moment it will go to labor market, if you will have all the laborers replaced with which is what is happening already and happened in many of the, if you see the car makers, they have a lot of nowadays industrial robots which are doing a task. Good thing is they are doing a task that human cannot easily do, it is risky, but the bad thing is, of course, people are not getting employed there. And think of it if that happens across all industries. So, and it is not just challenge to India, but India will face more heat when it comes to this. So, these are the challenges. Now, coming back to IIT Jodhpur, what IIT Jodhpur is doing in the realm of AI and in innovation in AI. So, we have a very strong, I should say, group as one of IIT alumnus, of course, not our alumnus, but our minister. Today, Ashwini Vaishnaw pointed out that IIT Jodhpur has been involved in AI, India AI mission since beginning. So we have around 300 plus faculty total, and then 700 plus research PhD students, and then the School of AI, the Department of Computer Science, Electrical, Mechanical, MedTech program that we have with AIMS, and then the iHub Drishti, which is on AR VR, it's a Section 8 company. So all that is basically very much instrumental in innovating in AI. We have a reasonably, I should say, impressive compute resources which is shared across the institute and individual faculty, and now we also have a strong collaboration with our armed forces after Operation Sindoor, especially being in the the state which is on the border with the enemy country. We are really instrumental in helping the armed forces. So we have a Manekshaw Center being established at Sam Manekshaw Center at IIT Jodhpur, and many of us faculty members are sort of engaged now. We have proposed projects with BSF, with Army. Excuse me. Now, in terms of computer science ranking, this is a website you can go and search yourself. If you really pick the artificial intelligence, computer vision, and then there is one more, robotics, which is not visible here, which are the core growth areas in AI, you will find IIT Jodhpur stands 4th in the list. Of course, we are far away from IISc, but still very much competent to IIT Delhi and better than IIT Bombay when it comes to the ranking, which is of course based upon the publications and many other things, but that is also a metric that with which something that too proud of being in Rajasthan and doing things well, being a young IIT relative to the Bombay or any other IIT Kharagpur and all. So essentially, we do a lot of research in AI applied to healthcare, heritage, defense, smart transportation, autonomous navigation, biometrics, and deepfake. So I'll just give a glimpse of that, and the name of the respective faculties here. So if you're interested, you can reach out to them. So in healthcare, we have a unique advantage, and only in comparison to only IIT Delhi has an advantage that there's AIMS in the same city where the IIT is. So with IIT Jodhpur and AIMS is jointly doing a MedTech program, and so this particular work is from multiple works from Dr. Deepak Mishra, where the focus is on doing an automated analysis of chest X-rays, which was very instrumental during COVID time. Then the multimodal learning for survival predictions. Then you want to get the the fine-grained rib fracture diagnosis, and I think I forgot this one because what was that? But I think it was for chest X-ray only. But there's a lot of things that we are doing there where we have medical data coming from AIMS, experts coming from AIMS, and we are trying to jointly solve the problems by applying deep learning, by applying AI. This is another interesting project on which there is a startup also from in the medtech, and this is an idea where we want to put a robotic arm. If you are in a remote village, let's say some previous session Sirohi was discussed, you may not get an expert pathologist or somebody who can operate an ultrasound machine or any kind of such machine. So what if there is a robotic arm which can do it autonomously, or it is being tracked through an expert sitting in the Jaipur? So all that also we are building there, and with the simulator we are testing it, right? So then there is another similar work with the robotic arm, basically dealing with the, so you can see there is of course there is not a human lying there, but this is for the palpation of the abdomen. All of you might know when you have some health issue, you go to doctor, traditionally they ask you to lie down and they test your stomach, and that can we do it with robot. The same faculty in fact has been also instrumentally working with the AIMS to design a dentist which can remotely operate on your tooth, right? So that kind of research is also happening. Then in the MedTech program we had got a lot of startups also. We have a pavilion, in the pavilion here also we have a stall where 3 startups demo is kept and what they are doing. A lot of funding, patents and everything is happening. Now AI for heritage. So when it comes to Rajasthan, heritage comes very important because it is not just about culture, it is also about the living of people, right? The majority of the revenue comes from visitors, tourists who comes from outside. So how do you really preserve that, renovate? So this is a temple in Kiradu, which is a remote location, a dilapidated state, broken structure. So our faculty visited, scanned that, and then we basically designed a generative, you can say an algorithm to come up with the structure, that how it might be when it was not destroyed by invaders or the test of time. You can just catch it. So this can be used for preservation, this can be used for the virtual experiences, right? So we have designed walk through these temples or whatever heritage structures which are allowed for preservation purpose also. So that kind of research also we are capable and we are doing. So this is my own work where I have been working on digitizing garments and then basically draping garments, Indic garments more specifically, because tied clothing is easy to do. Again, this looks like, and we have a startup also on that for virtual try-on kind of thing. So this basically we scan the human body, we scan, and then in the VR we can see how does this cloth looks from different side. Now we are also working on, give me an atlas of the garment or an image of the garment, and we have patents on them. We have a technology that can digitize it in 3D and then use that data for animation, for purchase also, for commercial purchase and all. This is another state-of-the-art Gaussian splatting that we have done by person taking few images of a structure. So this is a brain tree structure at IIT Jodhpur, where students typically spend their evenings. And then basically this is a continuous walkthrough of that generated through AI. So we do this kind of photogrammetry, you can say in some sense, but it's not actually photogrammetry. So those kind of things also we do. So we did a recent paper on IIII on this problem of compressing the Gaussian splats this year, which is a premier conference on AI. Then this is another work where our researchers, Dr. Anand Mishra is a faculty who's been working on basically digitizing the tradition, you can say the text that is there, the Indian knowledge system, which is sort of lying around and in the old scripts. So how do you really digitize that? It's not as simple as you put a Google on and you get this kind of, because the script is different, for which the models of the Western AI models are not trained, and it's very noisy, right? So that kind of research also is happening at IIT Jodhpur from the heritage point of view. But beyond heritage, so this is another work that I have been doing on digitizing the Indian classical dance forms. So we have built a multi-camera system. Of course, this was done with my previous employer in IIIT Hyderabad, where we built this multi-camera system with Microsoft Kinect devices. And then we captured the person dancing, and we got the raw point cloud, and now we are refining it with the learning-based techniques with the AI to really fill the the noise that is there in the head, for example, because the Kinect device cannot work with the hairs or the missing parts when the hand occlude the body. So all that is something which we are also doing. Then there is also AI in image and text. There's a lot of work happening for Indian languages. It's part of the Bhashaning project that was also listed today. And then basically it's about how do you really navigate, and I'm sure Google and all also have a lot of solutions now, but this started happening quite long back, Bhashini project for Indian languages, and now Meta and Google are trying to catch up with that. In transportation also, of course, Google and all provide a lot of information nowadays, but how do you really generate your own softwares we can deal with so this is for the Jodhpur, some monitoring that we have done about the traffic. And then we do an ML on it, AI ML on it, to understand the behavior of traffic on specific days, and then do prediction models, help to handle the logistics. So Dr. Debashish Das is handling that project. This is another project excuse me, that I am doing with
we present a learning-based approach
BSF
for infinite
on,
terrain generation and level of
basically we have
detailing,
proposed on
employing
generating and
quad
visualizing
tree-based
the
rendering.
terrain. So if you really go to for example, in
Virtual
Galwan
world
area of
creation
Kargil
is
or
essential for modern multimedia
Kargil area,
applications
Galwan
such as
area with
gaming,
the China border, or
animation,
even
or
the
AR.
Rajasthan border, we have a lot of areas with desert where it's very difficult to model the terrain and then basically predict the terrain position, especially in the desert. The dunes keep changing their shape, right? So we are doing simulation, modeling of those dunes and the mountain structures. And then this particular work is an old work of mine where we have generated this from the learning-based models and infinite terrain. I think the video is giving some issues, so we'll skip that. This is another latest work that I have been working on, autonomous driving area, where we want to predict the future time frame. So let's say what you're seeing here is the ground truth is a red point cloud from the top view, we call bird's eye view. So there is a vehicle moving with the scanner, a LiDAR sensor, and it's scanning the world, right? And we want to predict how other vehicles will move in future with respect to me. And that is needed to avoid accidents, to control my trajectory. So, this also published at a top tier robotics conference in Japan in 2024 called ICRA, where we got state of the art results on the 2 publicly available data sets called Kitty and New Scenes, right. So, this is also an algorithmic innovation that we have been doing. Now, we are looking at drones, anti-drone solutions also. So, IIT Jodhpur has a program on drone and anti-drone technologies that on the demand of actually defense forces we have introduced. This is another practical application that we have been very instrumental on unfortunate incident in train collision in Orissa, where our dignitary that was there today, Ashwini Vaishnavji, reached out to our faculty members, Dr. Richa Singh and Mayank Vatsa, seeking help on the people who are victims, their bodies were really mutilated. So, how do you match with them, right? It's not a simple face recognition task and you can just seek a Google right there. So, what we did was basically what they did, I mean, is that they first got the the mobile numbers, and from mobile that the people use for for booking the tickets, and from there they get the identity of from the mobile KYC, they got the photos, and then they did the matching with their own indigenous biometric algorithm, and then they were able to match 120 unclaimed dead bodies within 18 hours of the incident. Right. So, we are doing a lot of practical things also, which is applications. This is another thing that has happened deployed during Operation Sindoor, and also you remember Operation Sindoor, there is so much of fake videos being generated and shared, and propaganda was happening from both sides. I am not just blaming individuals. So, there also IIT Jodhpur's algorithm was instrumental in detecting the deep fakes and then removing them from the government agencies. So, does happen also in the general election in 2024 that it was deployed. So, a lot of technology that we are developing is being employed, and from the IIT Jodhpur's point of view, but in general there are a lot of challenges in AI from the perspective of not just the global, but also the regional implementation. And in the last session, as it was stated, that maybe the regional problems or local problems are not something that a global AI is interested to, or global AI community is interested to solve. Right. So, we have to find solutions. Water is another thing that a lot of research is happening in Section 8 company JCKIF there on filtering the water, storing the water. In IIT Jodhpur itself, we have done a satellite survey and identified the where the traditional old water body might be, and then we dig it more, and a lot of water was collected. Probably in few years it will accumulate first underground, and then we will have the functional water body in the campus. So, this kind of thing can be translational, and then it can really go and deploy to regional challenges that is out there with the AI. With this, I will stop. I was in a rush, of course, because last session practically, and I have to catch a train. But if there is any question or anything, I would love to answer, or any comment. Yes.
Excellent presentation. So, I would like to know anything which agriculture, AI in agriculture.
So, AI in agriculture. Yes. So, basically agriculture is traditionally pursued in the realm of GIS, where they were using satellite, because typically it is about the large scale data. So, I myself has pursued that with a company called Scient back in when I was not in Jodhpur. We have a civil department which also deals with that, because they do a lot of GIS with satellite data. There are a lot of challenges there. Now with the drones, it is also now robotics is coming into picture on estimating the yield, plucking the pomegranate, and then of course taking the some chemicals, spreading or urea or whatever appropriately, water. So, it is also an IoT task, because now you can put a sensor and look at the humidity in the soil. So, a lot of distributed things are there, but from the point of view of a center for agriculture, I do not think I can recall at IIT Jodhpur as of now. But it will be good to have that, because there is a competence there. But then there are other efforts that I know in the country which are happening on those lines, and a lot of startups are also there. Typically, if you go to states like, I do not know about Punjab, but in the southern states there is a lot of awareness about it. I know like in Andhra, West Godavari and all. So, there was a program called eSagu that Professor Reddy was there, I remember, that was implemented in Telangana back in 2008 and 10, where image based analytics was done and all. So, I am sure now it is much more doable, but it is still a challenging problem, because there is no generic one model that you can learn. Every yield, every season weather conditions are different, and every season different kind of pests there, And then of course, it's also the seed is the biggest challenge because it's so much of diversity there. And then, but then there are other challenges in agriculture, which is also scale. Unlike in US and all, India, we have small scale farmers. So affordability itself is a big challenge, that the yield is so small that the profit is so small. And there's a lot of inertia also and fear that our land will go to someone and all. We all know what happened to the governments tried to bring some revolutionary things, and they had to themselves put it on hold. So agriculture and AI can immensely help, but India is a big challenge because the diversity, right, in both, not just in our way of doing farming, but also the land, right. It's a significant diversity in the land. Small change in the area, you see the water levels are very different. So those things are there. Satellites can help up to some point, but you will need a lot of IoT and robotics also intervention to really understand and really micromanage what is happening on the ground for specific region and specific farm. So it's challenging, yeah.
I have one question related to maybe experience from the camp you have shown.
Okay.
And particularly in my camp, there are 3-4 incidents where this can easily happen, and similar reports used to be done by the doctor. Similar set of questions being asked to the human being. So, how much time do you think that AI will lead to such extent that similar kind of questions are to be asked and solutions or findings can be given by analyzing those things?
See, the biggest problems I have seen, like medical imaging also, what some of my friends working so all the way from my master's time at IIT and all, as you correctly pointed out, that human can make mistakes frequently. That's why we go to second opinion, third opinion in oncology and other areas. But there we know who made the mistake, even though we can't really penalize them always. But with AI, it is even harder because we don't know, and then so it's just a matter of trust. So it's like we know now that robots are doing operations. It is now wider acceptability because precision is higher, right? However, diagnosis is an area where people still lack trust on AI, right? Because they need somebody with experience and human touch more importantly. Because sometime, I don't know if you have seen, I'm sure these Hollywood movies on them, whether it's a Wall-E or whether it's a famous robotics, I forgot, iRobot, right, where robots can make decisions based upon, let's say if the survivability is low, robot might declare that don't try and try a patient which is better, which has higher prognosis. But on the other hand, a human would say, if it's a child, I will give whatever it's possible, because even if the survivalist chance is few percent, I will want to try it. So it's a ethical dilemma more than that, right? It's not about accuracy. No, that's a problem. Actually, data is always less in medical domain as you go, especially specialized areas, right? So huge means when it comes to DNA, if you get access to DNA level, then we are talking about really engineering the DNA, right? So typically you get very few data. Even so, when I go take my child to pediatric, I go to a doctor which is seeing more kids than a doctor which is seeing few kids every day. I have my personal experience on that. The simple is more sampling a human does, more understanding they have about the phenomena. So I go to a shop which is really a low end, behind the pharmacy some experienced doctor of the Umaid hospital is sitting. Because this guy is seeing 100 kids every day. He knows what is going on in the weather, what is going on, what virus is. So that's true with AI also, right? The more data you get, more richer models we can learn. But unfortunately, there is something called, I'm many times surprised people are not aware of that. They talk about AI, they're not aware. How many of you heard of a black swan paradox? Anybody has heard? Right. Since childhood, all of you are brought up in India. So if I ask you to describe a swan, what will be how will you describe it? भाई जो सरस्वती के नीचे जो पाठ्य पुस्तक आती थी ना पहले पट्टी पहाड़ा बोलते थे हमारे बचपन में, I was brought up in MP, तो उसमें वो सरस्वती बनी हुई होती थी जो शायद वो राजा रवि वर्मा की ड्राइंग है और उसमें स्वान होगा, right? That's our imagination. So it's white, right? All of us know swan is white. It represents purity, it represents this and that. And that's not just India. Across the world, known world, that was the phenomena. Up until they discovered in Australia, when the Australia continent was discovered, they found a swan which was having a genetic mutation, just like white tiger, it was a black swan. It's a type of swan which has a black color. Kala Hans. Now the moment they stuck it, they said, oh, something is wrong. Oh, there could be white tiger, but there cannot be a black swan, it is something else. But then they realized it's all just swan, except the color is black, right. So then for a moment acceptability is not there in people, right. Then later on that tolerance happens that that's also possible. So AI is like human, in fact it's inferior to human. It has very strong conviction about what it has seen. All these religious fights and all happens in the world because people have strong conviction of my reality is right, yours is wrong, right. So I think that's problem with any AI model. We first thing we teach in ML class that I teach, there is no perfect ML model, right. Every model is vulnerable because it is trained always on a finite data. There is no model trained on infinite data, whether it's human or a machine. So that's the problem. So black swan paradox restrict any model to be perfect. In medical domain especially, where people expect 100% accuracy, but in reality even the doctors make blunders, right, and they are humans. So we have to accept and sort of live with that. So I think getting 100% is not going to happen, but over and over I think that acceptance is happening in people about trust. But in general AI is not perfect and so is a human. So we have to make sure that we agree to that, whether it's agriculture or healthcare or defense, right, things can go wrong. I remember talking to a BEL person and then said we bought a Russian missile system, and I don't record this, but and they don't know that this is a wrong piece of code. See, if it was fired during war, it was hit an Indian target rather than the enemy target, because it was wrong orientation in the code. So essentially machines can do really great things up until they are in control. The moment you lose control, then you know Lamborghini can do more damage than Alto when you made an accident with them. Okay, any other question? Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. If somebody has an idea about the defense forces, maybe related to internal security, how we can approach you and tell you the idea and what is the strategy?
So there is a center called Sam Manekshaw Center at IIT Jodhpur now. You can write to them, reach out to them. But then there is also a lack of trust when it comes to outsiders. So you need to be somewhere engaged with us, because there is some sense of confidentiality is also there. When even the armed forces don't trust always us, right? Because of it's a new relationship. So you have to prove yourself, and slowly you have to get into that. But yeah, you can reach out to us.
Because I have wrote a lot of emails to DRDO and there is a program called Dare to Dream.
See, defense getting is hard. That's what I'm saying. Even in IIT Jodhpur, if you'll write independently, it may not be so easy to entertain, right? So you need figure out a way to get some kind of executive status of student, and then get into take a project and then sort of gain confidence into that. That's one possibility. But being in academia, we are more open than DRDO. But DRDO by design is not supposed to entertain such random things, right? Any other question? If no, then I'll stop here. Thanks a lot.